we'll start with Shirley. What's your full name, and why were you named that?
Shirley Ann Throckmorton Groom. Why was I named that? The story goes that my mom wanted to name me Angela, but because I was a C-section, she was still under the effects of the anesthesia when the nurse came in and asked my father what my name was and had him fill out the birth certificate. And when Mom woke up, that's when she found out my name was Shirley Ann. And the best we can figure is Shirley Temple had been a pretty big deal in the 30s and 40s. And I don't know, maybe that's why my dad really liked that name, I don't know.
Everybody wants to know who's that great big handsome Romeo. I'm presenting you right now. Daddy, take a bow.
But I guess Mom wasn't very happy about it. I was born in Topeka, Kansas on January 28th, 1952.
And you were born a C-section, huh?
Yeah, because I don't know I guess this is pertinent to posterity. Apparently, Mom was 35 when she had me, and it had been 11 years since she'd had a baby. That was Karen, and they said she just didn't dilate after a long time. Oh, I also know during that birthing process, I guess she had a bad cold, very bad cold. So I can't imagine when they are trying to tell you to breathe when you can't breathe in the first place.
My name is Larry Allen Groom. I was born in Wichita, Kansas, March 14th, 1953. My mother was 18 years old. My dad was, how old was my dad? 35. He was born in 28, 15, 27? No, 25. He was 25. So I was the second child. My name, I don't really think there's a story to my name. They just picked names they like. Larry was a popular name in the 50s.
Didn't name him Lawrence, named him Larry.
It just says Larry on my birth certificate. I've had people all through my life think that my real name was Lawrence, but it never was. And my dad's name, people would call him Robert, but his real name is Bobby on his birth certificate.
Even your mom called him Robert.
Bobby with an IE, right?
Yeah. So I was also born a C-section, like Shirley, because my mom was small and she was very young, and she had a difficult delivery with my older sister, who was born when my mom was just 16 years old, and she's only 5'3", so she was small and young, and so my sister was born. They had to pull her out with forceps, and so she had a fractured skull, they said, when she was born, although baby skulls are soft. So what else was I supposed to answer?
How did your parents meet?
Well, my mom was still in high school. My dad lived in the same town, or nearby town, and my mom's older brother, she has one older brother and 4 younger siblings. Her older brother, no, 3 younger siblings, from the same father anyway. She has others from subsequent stepfathers. But her older brother was dating a friend, and actually I don't think she was a friend of Mom, she was a friend of Dad's, and so there was kind of this intermingling. There were Mom's older brother and his future wife were dating, and Dad liked Mom, who was a sophomore in high school at the time. He was 22. but it kind of the spur of the moment, they decided to get married, and I don't even know how long they had been dating, if they had been dating a long time or anything. But she wanted to get out of the house because she had kind of an abusive stepfather, and spur of the moment, her older brother said, "Why don't you guys get married too?" And so they did. They had like a double ceremony. Her older brother and his wife, and my dad and mom.
This was they lived in this northwestern Kansas little podunk town called
Almena. My dad was born in Norton.
Yeah, look on a map. You'll see.
Norton has like 3,000 people. That's like this county seat, the big town. And Almena is like 600 people. And that's where my mom went to high school. So she was a sophomore in high school and dropped out like 1 month into her sophomore year to get married.
And so she just dropped out at 15 or whatever, 16?
Yep, 15. 15 and a half.
So they got married, and then what happened next? Did they stay in town or move somewhere?
No, my dad got a job with Boeing in Wichita, Kansas. I don't know how he heard about the job opening, and I'm not even sure what the job was that he did there, because he didn't have the job after I was born. We moved. Well, he might have held it for a couple of years. Anyway, he had a job in Wichita, so that's where they moved to. And I think Kathy was born in Wichita. I was born in Wichita, though, while he worked for Boeing there. Wichita was like the Boeing headquarters at the time. They still have a big plant there, but
And getting a job with Boeing, that's a pretty big deal, and you know, you're going to get decent benefits and stuff. But you know, when you're young, you don't even think about stuff like that, I guess.
and Wichita was clear across the state. It's way down in the southern part of Kansas.
And so who's Kathy?
Kathy's my older sister. She's a year and a half older. And she wasn't, like, they didn't have to get married because my mom was pregnant. She was born more than 9 months later. She was born like 11 months after they got married. And she was premature, so.
Yeah.
But my mom and dad did tell a story about when I was still a baby, that they had a car wreck. The car slid on a icy highway near Wichita, and this was before they had car seats. And I was like a couple months old, according to them. And
So Kathy was like 2?
yeah, Kathy would be about 2, and supposedly the car flipped over and turned all the way over and landed back on its wheels, and I was not in the car anymore. And they said my basket had gone out the window and was just laying in a ditch, and I was crying, but wasn't harmed. So that's a story they always told.
And so you were born in Wichita. Do you remember your, let me look at my questions again. So your dad was working at Boeing or no when you were born?
Yeah, he was still there.
And what did your mom do? Did she do anything? Was she
No, she stayed at home at that time. She didn't start working till I was in kindergarten. She got a waitress job.
And do you know where you were living when you were first a baby?
We lived in Wichita for a while. The first place I remember moving after that was to a town called Beloit. And I only remember, I must have been like 4 or maybe even 3, because I barely remember it. I only remember one thing, that they had kind of a flood, and we were driving in our car to, seems like somebody, either Kathy or Mom, they needed some kind of cold medicine, and so I was with my dad driving in the car, and the water was like up to the axles of the car when we were driving down the street.
Oh my gosh.
So I remember that, but that's all I remember about that time. And I don't even know where Beloit is. I'd have to look it up on the map, someplace in central Kansas. So we lived there. The first real memory I have, we moved to Hoxie, Kansas, and my dad got a job with the city. He did like filling in potholes for the street department or whatever department that was. And that's where I went to kindergarten.
So my parents met at a roller skating rink in Lawrence, Kansas. Mom had been divorced for, I'm trying to think, like 7 years, I think. And she and her girlfriends went roller skating. She worked at I forgot what it's called, but it's where they made, I think, gunpowder and stuff, like during the war, and then I think she kept working there. I'm not sure. But anyways, they met at this roller skating rink, and I guess hit it off, and at some point, I don't know their anniversary, but somewhere along the line they got married.
And how old were they?
And let's see, Mom would have been about 33, and Dad would have been 42. There was a 9-year difference. And 2 years later, I came along. And 3 years after that, Denise came along. And I don't remember what the next part of this
And so
is.
tell us about Karen was the older sister, your older sister?
Right, Mom had gotten married. I have to do a calculator. I don't know how old she was, but in her early 20s, I suppose. And she married a man named Larry, of all things. And his name is Larry Cree, C-R-E-E. And he was the proverbial traveling salesman. And very good looking, had lots of hair. I remember that. I met him once. I'm thinking it was like I want to say a family reunion, but I could be mistaken. I was very young, but I've seen photos, and yes, he was very good looking, and
Didn't he come
apparently
to Kelly's wedding? Wasn't he there?
maybe.
I think I saw him.
Oh, maybe that was
With
it.
the white hair.
He had white hair, so maybe that was it. He was at my niece's wedding. But Karen was born of that marriage, but the traveling salesman part of it all was the problem, because I guess he had kind of a girl in every port sort of thing. And there's a lot of sort of soap opera to that breakup, and I've got that information from Karen on an audio recording, but needless to say that they ended up getting a divorce, and Karen was staying with Grandma and Grandpa. That'd be my mother's mom and dad, and that was Annabelle Burnham and James Edgar Burnham in Valley Falls, Kansas. And she'd been staying with them when Mom worked. Mom worked, not sure, Lawrence, I guess. I think it was, anyway, I don't remember for sure. But during the week she would stay with Grandma and Grandpa. And then when Mom met my father and they ended up getting married, it's amazing this wasn't discussed beforehand, or maybe it was, I don't know. But the story goes that he did not want anybody else's kids.
Your dad?
My father. And so Karen ended up staying with Grandma and Grandpa, in Valley Falls all throughout her grade school and high school. And I guess Karen forgave Mom, but she never forgot. I mean, that's a really huge hurt for a child to be basically abandoned by their mother. I was surprised. I didn't even know the story. I mean, I knew Karen lived with Grandma and Grandpa, but you know, as a child, you don't ask stuff. That's just the way it was. So I don't even know how old I was, but definitely, I think, I don't know, I think maybe I was even married by the time I heard the story. I had no idea that Mom had basically married somebody who wouldn't accept somebody else's child. And the kind of, I don't know if it's not ironic, but my father had 2 boys from his previous marriage that grew up with his mother without him. But just a huge mess. So just think how lucky you are, Gabe. You've
Yep.
got both your parents and you got to grow up with both of them.
Yep.
Yeah. And I so like him, and I think he likes me too.
So what did your dad do? So back to when you were born, do you know what your dad was doing for work? And did your mom work?
I don't have this in a sequential order. I know that he did these things as I remember. I know he was kind of a handyman. He I do know when I was in, I guess, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th grade till he died, he was an apartment manager. So we would get a free apartment. I guess it was free. And he would be the manager, so he'd, take applications and have people, move in, and he would be able to fix the electricity and the plumbing and the whole 9 yards. One of the places that he managed just had a few units, maybe half dozen or something, and the one where we lived when he died, it was a converted mansion in Leavenworth, Kansas. And it was really cool. It was a giant brick house, like 3 stories with a basement and an attic, and it had a round room. Is that called a turret? Anyway, big one of the when you look at it from the front, one section had a round room. So each floor had one round room. I thought that was really cool. And I think somebody said a military general, because it was in Leavenworth, a military general had lived there, but I don't know that. That this was, I was hearing things, misremembering, I don't know. I was in 6th grade when Daddy had a heart attack and died, so who knows. But he was also a baker. He was a baker at a university near Leavenworth called St. Mary's. So I remember going there, and they had these giant mixers that they would mix the dough in. And I remember there were these huge vats of lard, and they had these big old like buckets of sugar and flour and chocolate chips. We always got, if we went to see Daddy, we always got like a handful of chocolate chips.
About how old were you then?
Well, let's see. We moved to Leavenworth when I was in 2nd grade. So I would say I was somewhere between 9 and 10, maybe. And he had also, prior to that, Okay, we lived in Kansas, and I remember maybe my kindergarten was in a place, I think it was in Meriden, Kansas, a little dinky town. Then we went out to Colorado Springs because Mom's brother lived there. That was Harold Burnham. He lived there, and he's the one that got Daddy a job, or helped him, at Denver University, I think is what it's called.
In Colorado Springs.
Is it? Or did we live in Denver? Maybe I don't know. I don't remember now. University of Denver, Denver University. I want to say it's Denver University. But he worked there in, he was a cook of some sort.
Harold lived in Denver, if that's...
Yeah,
if
it must have
he's-
been Denver. And I don't know. Oh, and when we lived there, apparently Mom was a waitress. I think. Seems like. And then, for whatever reason, I don't know. Maybe he lost a job. Maybe they just got tired of being there. I don't know. We moved back to Kansas, and that's when we went to Leavenworth. Yeah. I missed something. No. So I was, Meriden would have been kindergarten, then first grade was Denver, then second grade I'm back to Kansas. That's Leavenworth. Yeah.
And then your younger sister was born when?
3 years after I was, so that would have been 55.
55.
February 25th, 1955.
55.
And her name is Denise Darlene, well, it was Throckmorton.
Does her name mean anything? She named after anyone?
Not that I know of. I think Mom just liked the sound of it. I always thought it was funny because her initials is DDT, was when she was growing up, which was some sort of pesticide or something that was so awful that they had to ban it. Okay, so I'm a bad sister. What are you gonna do?
You didn't name her.
Yeah, I didn't name her.
My sister was also born in 1955, my younger sister, in August.
And what's your younger sister's name?
Her name is Susan K. Groom.
K-A-Y?
Yeah,
Does her name mean anything?
no.
I always thought, this is off the subject, but I always thought Larry's parents looked like movie stars. Is Susan Hayward, is that who?
Yeah.
Yeah.
People always said my mom looked like Susan Hayward. They were both pretty people.
And
Or
your dad was, what's his name? What's that guy's name?
kind of looks like Van Heflin, who's not good looking, but
Rugged looking.
I think it's more like the eyes. My dad had kind of prominent eyes, sort of like I do, and so he looks like Van Heflin, who I always think is homely, but there is like a kind of my dad's like a handsomer version of Van Heflin.
But I thought his mom, her younger pictures,
Yeah.
when she was youngest pictures I ever saw, she was really a cute girl.
Yeah.
And then as she got older, she looked like the young Susan Hayward, which that probably doesn't mean anything to you right this second, but if you go look it up on YouTube, you'll see she's just beautiful.
I'll put a picture in of Susan
There you
Hayward.
go.
Right now.
Insert picture. And my sis Susan was born, I think, in Beloit, so that kind of puts a time frame, because I remember being in during the town that had the flood. That was where my sister was born, so she's like 2 years younger than me, so I guess I was 2 or 3 when that happened. Must have been 3. I don't think any 2-year-old remembers anything. and I have real memories from the age of 4, so I must have been 3, and I only have that one memory from age 3. So parents of 3-year-olds, you don't need to worry about taking them anywhere because they won't remember.
Just leave them in a box until they're 4.
They won't even remember flying out of a car into a ditch.
No.
I was going to tell you, I remember a couple of things from when I was like first grade and kindergarten. I remember, the only thing is I don't remember which is which. I do remember, I think it was going to kindergarten, and I'm sure I didn't have to walk very far, but I know I walked down an alley. Now, in those days, an alley isn't scary, dark city, you know, where bums and garbage are. In the olden days, everybody had an alley because houses were not packed together like they are nowadays. And
You parked your car.
you parked your
behind.
car. You went down the alley to go into the back of your house, which is where your yard was, and backyard, your garage things. But so anyway, I remember walking down this alley, and there were lilacs blooming. And they say that your sense of smell, you always remember things. It's a very potent memory thing. But the lilacs, I just remember them just, it smelled so good, and they were just blooming over this person's fence, and I still remember it. Another thing I was going to tell you, and again, I was kindergarten or first grade, very young. I'm thinking it might have been kindergarten age. It's possible I could have been younger than that. What I do remember is it was night or evening, late evening, must have been summertime. Daddy was out working on some vehicle. He was like working under the truck or the car, and he had this light that was kind of a wire thing with a light bulb in it, and then it had a cord, you know, that you go and plug into the house. And I remember going outside. I don't know if I thought I was gonna help or what, but I was kind of a daddy's girl from what I understand, and I had gone outside. I didn't have any shoes on, and apparently the grass was damp, probably with dew. And I said something to the effect of, "Daddy, can I help you?" He said, "Here, hold this." So he handed me the light, and I took the light, and I was getting electrocuted, because I don't remember screaming or falling down, but I know that something bad happened. Somehow Dad, I don't know if he knocked it out of my hand, grabbed the cord away from me or what, I know they, I guess, took me in the house. I don't know if they called the doctor or what, but I survived. But I do remember them saying, "Well, Shirley just about got electrocuted last night."
I had a time when I almost got electrocuted, but it was, I didn't really almost get electrocuted, but I learned what an electric shock felt like. There was like this pop machine at the gas station down the street, and I was probably 9 years old, but went to get a Coke out of the machine and touched the metal, and it gave me a zap. So it's like there was live electricity on that Coke machine. That's when I learned what electric shock feels like.
So did you go home and say, "I got electrocuted"?
No,
Ow.
that's the end of that. I do remember a barefoot story though. Like you, this was when I was like before first grade. We lived in Norton, so it must have been the summer before first grade. And we ran around with bare feet in the summertime, and there was this field near our house that we were renting, and there were these wild mulberries growing like all over the place, and it was summertime, and they were all ripe and delicious, and we were all out there. I think me and Susan maybe Kathy, I don't remember her, but we were eating these mulberries and just gorging ourselves on them. And then when we came home, our feet were all purple from walking on the mulberries that had fallen on the ground.
That takes a long time for that to go away.
I don't even know if you can get mulberries. I think they're just wild things, but they're very sweet and delicious for children that didn't get candy every day,
Aww.
like modern children.
Gabe, you have a spider right there. It's off. No, it's hanging from the
I felt
leg.
that.
There you go.
Is it gone?
I wondering if you want to stop. Yeah, just because we don't even know if all that worked.
You could see how much gigabytes that took up.
I was born in Topeka, Kansas, on January 28th, 1952. What was the other part of the question?
Where?
When,
Oh,
where? I did it.
Topeka. And how did your parents meet? Who were your parents and how did they meet?
Wow. Margaret. My mother was Margaret Bell Barnum. Should I stop?
No, this is
Sure,
background.
say that again.
Okay.
That's Gershwin.
He's going, what the hell's going on? Come
Well,
here.
it's because you're giving her too much attention. I think these outtakes are good to have in the thing.
Yep.
They're not outtakes, it's part of the show.
Well, I thought he was going to clip it a lot.
Probably will.
This one's going to bark again. Anytime he's just on the verge.
Yeah, you can do roving camera work. Like
Melody.
coming right up into
Melody.
your face.
I will probably want to, I might move over to get a different angle, but you could still keep facing the same direction.
I'll act like I'm talking to this interviewer.
Yeah.
And at that time,
Okay.
So
Where
now
were
you're
we?
back to me, and where do my parents meet?
Yeah. And so just remember when you start talking,
What's the subject?
yeah. Okay, we're ready.